if Amy is lying, she has just made it harder for every true victim of child sexual abuse or to come forward.
Oh, yeah, just me doing me, right?
Kind of sharp. That's insane. Billy Bush. What a pleasure.
Another compliment. There she is. Pleased to welcome the great Maureen Callahan from The Nerve, who, by the way, Amy Griffin is pretty much all I can think about these days. Maureen Callahan, you raised questions and doubt about Amy and her allegations almost a year ago to the day, way before the New York Times came out with their expose, their deep investigation in Amarillo and Las Vegas. It's interesting because the Glitterati was promoting, this thing like it was the second coming. What made you say, huh?
Well, thanks, Billy, for that very kind introduction.
Sure.
And I've been watching your segments on Amy Griffin, and I'm very curious as to how and when this really began captivating you. For me, I was resistant to reading that book. Even the promotion of it, something in her affect and demeanor did not track with me, as being having recently recovered these most traumatic memories of being savagely brutalized and repeatedly by a teacher in her school. It didn't sit well. And then I did finally read the book, and none of it made any sense to me. I could understand why the media kind of soft pedaled this thing, sort of looked the other way. Her husband is a very, very powerful billionaire. He keeps a low profile. His name is John Griffin, otherwise known as the man who basically owns New York. But for me, and I said this on The Nerve a year ago when we first did this segment, someone very, very, very close to me is a 2-time survivor of sexual assault by 2 different men at a very tender age. And so I take this stuff very seriously, and I know what that kind of trauma looks like. And it never leaves you, ever, 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 ever. And this woman doesn't pass, just my opinion, the smell test, let alone fact checking.
Right. I'm with you in deep experience with the allegations that she makes in this. I have it very, very close. Someone that I love more than my own life, and have dealt with it in a support role for a long time. And that's part of my motivation here. The other part of my motivation is that's the biggest part. The next part is that lives have been upended, completely upended without any due process. And finally, I am a big believer in psychedelic assisted therapy. I talk about it all the time. I've had wounded warriors. I've had Navy SEALs. I care about it. I've done it. I've done MDMA-assisted therapy. Oh yeah, no, I've done it.
And for you, what is the significant difference? Because I've read, obviously, the progress with trauma, combat trauma, but what is the difference between that and any other kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy, Freudian or Jungian therapy? What does it do, Billy?
So what psychedelic assisted therapy does, and whether it's MDMA or psilocybin or ibogaine, which is what, the Navy, there's a great documentary called In Waves and War. Marcus Capone, Navy SEAL for 16, 17 years. His wife was about to leave him. She's like, this man he was gone from the family, from her, deeply depressed. And he, went to Mexico. Unfortunately, it's where he had to go to do ibogaine. And he completely turned his life around after one 10-hour major journey, because what it does, and that would be an extreme example, but MDMA as well, and all psychedelic assisted therapies, is it creates new neural pathways. What I say to people is, we all love Dr. Weingarten, who we go to see, or whoever it is, every Monday at 3:30. And for me, I've seen therapists for 35 years, and usually we have the same conversation as we had the week before. Mm-hmm. I never walk out going, oh my God, that's why I do the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
This is the answer to my negative patterns. Oh my God, I can see it. I can feel it. I now cannot do anything other than something about it. And it's all about neuroplasticity. And psychedelic assisted therapy creates new pathways. If you look as a metaphor, like an open field, right? And if you are, here's where you park, and here's where you park, and here's where the house is up the hill. And you walk on that same pathway every time, the pathway becomes the grass goes away and it's dirt because you've walked on it so many times. So you've, tamped down the same thinking patterns and the same emotions. And what neuroplasticity is it takes a different path. You get access to a higher consciousness about your life and your feelings and your emotions. And you can't get that once a week at 3:30. You can, not to shit on these guys, you can have wonderful integration sessions afterwards about, what you've learned and what you feel. But, at its greatest possible potential, Maureen, I see, maximum security prisons. I see incarcerated, clinical trials with incarcerated people who are deeply wounded, usually from childhood, people who've become animals. And this is a great way to access understanding and new thinking. What I have a problem in Amy's recounting, and I deal with people at the Psychedelic Science Institute in Los Angeles. We're doing a fundraiser in the fall. There's a moment where Amy says the facilitator in her first MDMA session says, "Oh, trust it. The medicine never lies." Well, that's not true. The medicine isn't a liar, but it doesn't give you an exact play-by-play of memories recovered in that way. It gives you a sense of an emotion, something you can connect to that may, that lives in you, right? It's more of that. And this guy, Rick Doblin, who is the head of MAPS, which is the biggest, research and educational nonprofit in the area, that's what he was speaking to when all of a sudden, I assume Amy's lawyers got to him and he came back and tucked in at the last minute before that New York Times article. "Oh, by the way, I totally believe Amy." And in the lawsuit in Nevada, there's an expert that weighs in and says, "To be clear, we just want Amy recovered her memories before the medicine kicked in."
What?
It added that in there because legally, like you're going to say this is all, it's not legal yet in this country. MDMA is legal in Australia, I believe, but not here. So if your whole basis is this happened, while I was under the influence or in this state, that's going to be a problem for your lawsuit at this point. And, so they made that change, but that's a long answer to what you asked. And that is, I've done this. It was incredibly helpful to me, and I'm going to do it again.
Incredible. The first prominent person I know of who engaged in, I believe he was doing it under LSD guided therapies, was Cary Grant.
Wow.
And, his major trauma was that he was abandoned by his mother as a very little kid. And he never got over that. And he credited those guided LSD therapy sessions with helping him really, really recover from that.
Indigenous cultures have known about this forever. Ibogaine is very heavy, and a lot of the PTSD soldiers, use this. Joe Rogan is a big proponent of it, but it comes from the iboga plant in the African country of Gabon, and there's cultures in Mexico. There's ayahuasca. There's all these things, and people like, oh, it's that's hippy dippy stuff. It's not. You can take MDMA, which is ecstasy, and go to a concert and feel good.
Right.
But if you take it at the right levels with a facilitator, what MDMA does is tamping down the ego, all the way down. The ego translates loosely to the voice in your head.
Mhm.
We all have a voice in our head, and it's telling us, all kinds of lies, all kinds of shaming, all kinds of things. It just quiets that down. So all you're left with is a total access to your feelings,
Wow.
emotions, and your truth. So, what Amy's, going with here, part of me feels that something happened to her. I can't imagine that she's just this extremely wealthy, narcissistic person who's like, I need a platform. Okay. It's not enough. I can't keep up with Gwynnie and Reese and everybody. And, without, I need something more. It's not enough to have the beautiful kids, the great schools, the billions of dollars, the private jet. I need more. I can't imagine. There are people who definitely think that, that is the case. I just think she got into this, and like everyone else, Blake Lively or Lance Armstrong or whatever, they got too deep.
Billy, though, but think whether this is subconscious or not, talking about what's going on underneath. Look at who you just named. Blake Lively, proven liar. Lance Armstrong, who I believe is a psychopath, another liar. I actually do believe that Amy feels exactly that for multiple reasons, not least of which in her book, she mentions her children, but she really barely talks about them, except for one passage in which her 10-year-old daughter comes to her and is quoted as saying, "Mom, you're not a real person. Like, basically, what's wrong with you? I don't even know you." I think the lack of, let me put it this way. If I were a survivor of childhood that was that brutal, and I somehow got the gumption to put it in the pages of a book, and that book caught fire and was hopefully doing what it should do, not least of which bring justice to the alleged child predator who's still out there roaming around. As we know, child rapists don't stop at one. Okay. You can't rehabilitate them. Pedophiles don't stop at one.
Yeah.
I don't think, and then Billy, if said book and my authorship, my very integrity was coming under question, people are saying, "Oh, her story's not adding up. What's going on here? This doesn't track." I don't think I would be swanning around red carpets. Like, not long after, whether it was the Nerve that did this or the New York Times piece dropped, she was sure to be posting on social media. Here I am on Instagram with my famous friends having a great time. Never been better. Like, it doesn't track. You think you would be both devastated and enraged. And this woman's like, I'm sorry. Did I get my invitation to the Met Gala? Are the paparazzi on me? Are we seeing me?
I had a girlfriend tell me, always look at the timing of the facelift. Like, when was the facelift? Does it match when, a massive promotional tour is coming out, people disappear, and everybody's had a facelift. I'm going to get one myself, but
You don't need one.
Well, thank you so much.
It's true.
Is there, what bothers you most about, what nags at you the most?
There are several things. In the micro, it is that she has ruined a man's life. Mr. Mason is the pseudonym she gives this teacher in Amarillo, Texas, who still lives there. The entire city knows exactly who this man is. It was reported in the New York Times that when the tell came out, he went into hiding. Nobody has seen him. Law enforcement in Amarillo told the New York Times they were anticipating a wave of similar reports in the wake of the tell, because this is what happens. Where there's one victim, there's 20, 30, 50. Crickets. This man has had his life. There is no greater smear than calling somebody a child rapist. She doesn't seem to give a shit. Then there's Claudia in the book, who you were speaking about on one of your most recent episodes of Hot Mics, whose real name is Jolene, who is suing Amy for stealing her story. They knew each other. in the Times piece, Jolene says she was still pseudonymous then, but she says, I was raised in a foster home. I was a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks. I wanted the popular girls to like me. Know who was in charge of the popular girls? Amy fucking Griffin, who loaned Claudia / Jolene the dress in which she was actually at that school dance. Amy fucking Griffin, whose story does Claudia / Jolene say Amy stole? I mean, come on. Then in the macro, this is a real moral grave injury, because if Amy is lying, she has just made it harder for every true victim of child sexual abuse or to come forward. She has done real fucking damage. And for what? So she could feel special? Amy doesn't have a talent, Billy. We know it by now. She's married to a billionaire forever. She's been rolling around with the likes of Gwyneth and Reese and blah, 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 female founders. She needed to feel special. So she conjured this story up out of thin air, my opinion. And by the way, which she leaves out of the book, is that her husband, billionaire John Griffin, is a major investor in MDMA therapies. He needs this stuff to get approved and come to the market. And how convenient that she shrouds these recovered memories under MDMA guided therapy. Because if she's caught lying, she could just say, whoops, well, I was high. I was on drugs.
But she can't, because now her lawyers have tucked in this Nevada case. They've tucked in, to be clear, we've had an expert determine that Amy's recovered, it all happened before the medicine kicked in. That's
their self-report. How do they prove that?
It's crazy. It's great. The whole premise of the book is that it was MDMA-assisted recovery of memories. That you can't do that at this point. Maureen, I have to tell you that yesterday I found the real Claudia, which was no one has done, and it was a viewer of
Incredible.
Hot Mics. Yeah, a viewer of Hot Mics put the pieces together, and I was like, okay, and I followed it and got the name and the maiden name and the married name and the state and the town, and I was like, okay, well, let's see what seems like sometimes you get a vibe when someone DMs you and you're like, that person might not be altogether there. This felt very credible. I so simply, found the number, contacted, and, hours went by, left phone messages. And then, how did you get my name? Where did you get my number? And we engaged. And, this real Claudia person that, it is my takeaway that Amy did meet with this person. She took in the lawsuit, you can see her, posing a redacted selfie with somebody, but that did take place. But again, the real Claudia produced nothing. I have nothing for you. I don't, other than I can't give you anything other than my sympathy that this happened to you. I'm so sorry. And then of course, at the end of the tell, it's the big, finish. It's the, she gets a postcard, and on the postcard, it says, I didn't have the courage to tell you then, or I couldn't tell you or something. And she's like, Claudia, is it you? And she reaches out, and Claudia's like, no, it's not me. I didn't send the postcard. It is my belief. I have believed that Jolene is, if this goes forward, going to come out and say, I did send a postcard, and, the onus will be on her to prove that. So what I see is not enough, not really anything coming from Amy that's concrete. And Jolene has several declarations from people. She's got a woman named LaRonda with whom she worked at a children's abuse, Father's Ranch, it's called, a children's abuse facility center camp, where she, part of the protocol, like in AA, you sponsor people. So the counselors and teachers are survivors themselves. And part of the protocol is they share their experiences. And so this woman, is on the record, penalty of perjury, saying, I worked with Jolene, and she told me this story. And I think Jolene's daughter. And then there's the corroborator of the boy that went to the dance with her. And then there's the girl who was also in the foster home with her, who said, I helped clean the dress before it was returned. There's a lot of pieces there. If this judge doesn't say there's enough merit to go forward, that's unbelievable. And I want you to see the judge, this guy, Maureen, look at this guy. What a guy. 87 years old, Judge Richard Fruin presiding. He's seen a thing or two, this guy. 87.
Wow.
Yeah.
Billy, where is this trial taking place?
So Jolene's suit is in California, and that's the Los Angeles Superior Court judge. She's in California. And Amy filed first of all, a motion to dismiss Jolene's, and then filed her own in Nevada. And it was a federal case. And, here's the thing, obviously Jolene doesn't come from a lot of money. Her lawyer works on contingency, but when you're a defendant, and you got Megyn Kelly down the hall, she'll confirm, when you're a defendant, you can't work on contingency. So to keep that case going, that's going to bankrupt, she's going to have to start a GoFundMe to pay for that. The lawyer can't, work on contingency. So she's fighting to keep this a federal case that would be, very expensive.
That's the thing. That's the other thing. Amy Griffin has so much money. She can further victimize this woman whose story I believe, and just bankrupt her and just bully her. I really did think Amy Griffin would have just written her a check, like a big fat check, a life-changing check to just make this go away.
Well, after the judge rules if this goes forward or not, I don't know. Is she going to be one of those people who's so in deep that she doesn't, and she's going to see it all the way through? Or does she say, look, this has gone too far. These are my memories. I don't want this to go any further. Here's a check. She's hoping right now that it gets thrown out. Like, throw this out in California, throw out Jolene's, and then I'll drop mine and we'll just walk away and everything will be okay. But if he says it goes forward, I can't see, I still think, even though it's going to sting and it's going to look terrible, there'll be a smell to the tell. I think she's, would be wise to cut a check still.
Yeah, I can't see the judge not ruling that this case should go forward, that it has enough merit to be heard in a court of law, for all of the reasons that we've discussed. I've been hoping against hope that Mr. Mason will come forward, and that he too would launch a suit. You have?
I know who he is. I've texted him.
And has he responded at all?
No. I've also texted the guy who I believe another viewer, brought to me, the guy who is listed as James in the book, the guy who allegedly, raped her in London when she was in college, and she had a summer job over there. Her father connected her to a friend of his son who was over there, and she says this is the first guy in the tell who non-consensually took advantage of Amy. But that would have been if the last alleged violent assault was 16, as she says in the book, in the tennis center with Mr. Mason. This would have been after sophomore year, so 20, 21, only 4 or 5 years later. And something so unsettling as someone graping you there, date grape, if you will, like that didn't unearth
spark the trauma.
Anything from 4 years.
Right. Okay. So here's I'm going to start with James, and then I'm going to go back to the Mr. Mason part of it. I went back and looked at and read some stuff before speaking to you, just to refresh my memory. The James story, she claimed she was a virgin. They were out on a date. They went back to James's. They were drinking. James was asking her all kinds of questions, making it clear that he thought this was leading up to a mutual sexual encounter. Of course, can a woman say no at any point? Yes. And should that be respected? Yes. What does not track to me in her story is she says he went ahead and had intercourse with her anyway. And then the next day called her and said, by the way, I wasn't wearing a condom, so you should go get checked out to see if you're, I can tell you as a woman, the difference between a man wearing a condom and a man not wearing a condom.
Well, she says
And
they were very drunk, though. I mean, like
No.
they drank a bottle of wine at dinner and more when they got home. And then he said to her, "Where do you like to have sex?" And she said, "I don't know, the hot tub." And she was
Billy,
like,
I'm going to speak for myself, but have you ever had drunk sex?
"Me?"
Like I have. Is it like you completely blocked out? You have no memory of what went on? I mean, come on.
I'm still waiting to have some sex of any kind.
It doesn't track. I don't believe it. She also says that she was a virgin at the time. It's like it's typically painful for a woman I'm sorry. That doesn't track. The second thing with Mr. Mason is that she claims that all of these violent, sexual, brutal assaults happened either in the girls' bathroom. There was one in Mr. Mason's classroom where he bent her over his desk, yanked up her dress, violently raped her from behind. At least one in the locker room. These are public places. I do not believe for a moment that nobody would have seen anything, heard anything. Elementary schools, the doors all have glass panels for a reason, for safety, so that there's transparency. People going by can see in, kids can see out. None of that makes any sense. And then she's detailing these assaults in which, he's got her belly down on the bathroom floor, his cowboy booted foot digging so deeply into her back that she's feeling it in her rib cage. Then he's slamming her against the wall, tying her up with a blue bandana. This girl never had welts or bruises. She's detailing the kind of assaults that would send someone to the ER. If she's detailing assaults that would cause a child to begin acting out in very alarming ways. She was also the daughter in the book. This is another lie. You tell one lie, how many more follow? She makes it sound like she's a small town girl, came from really nothing. Her parents are millionaires. They were very prominent people in the community. Child predators tend to go after the kids who nobody's paying attention to, the kids from broken homes, kids like Claudia / Jolene growing up in a foster care center, not people like well-loved children from big families like Amy Griffin's.
And key to note, Jolene claims it's not this teacher that Amy suggests, who, like you mentioned before, has lived in Amarillo for over 30 years without incident. Since then, she says it's a different teacher who left a year and a half or whatever it was very soon after and took off. So I assume she knows the name and they'll be able to track that person down if again, it goes forward. The strategy has changed for Amy's legal team. You probably saw the New York Post piece that was attacking the New York Times and their writing and calling the author, Katie Rossman, a jealous person, since Amy's, memoir outperformed Katie's from 15 years ago. Boy, that would be a long held grudge. But, they say that, they went down to Amarillo and the New York Times basically groomed Jolene. Jolene didn't know anything until she read the tell. They groomed Jolene and gave her what to say to match Amy's. It's a big stretch.
I saw that piece. It was in the Sunday paper this weekend. It was so off the wall. I was actually surprised they published it, because it basically accused the New York Times of betraying women by tracking down Claudia / Jolene. I kind of felt like that writer just sort of came in with like, oh, here's something that'll get clicks and likes. I went back to the original New York Times piece, and you noted this in one of your episodes on Amy and the Tell, the book proposal when that went around. I talked about this on The Nerve too. I hate to say it, but this is an all too common story. I was abused as a child. You have to have something that differentiates you in the marketplace to get a book deal. And what Amy did was not only name this teacher, use his real name in a book proposal that was circulated to at least 35 editors. She then listed all of her famous friends who were going to help her promote it. Reese Witherspoon. I wrote some of them down. Anna Wintour, Katie Couric, Savannah Guthrie, Naomi Watts, Laura Dern, Amy Schumer. These are all my celebrity friends, and they're going to help me promote the book, and we're going to make this thing a New York Times bestseller. And then that's what got Amy her reported $1 million book deal. So I don't know how you could just turn around and say the Times made that up. Because here's the deal. This is why the New York Post was so ridiculous for publishing that story. If that New York Times reportage was really that sloppy and defamatory, guess who else would be getting sued by Amy Griffin right now? The New York fucking Times.
Yeah, they cite, they've got a women problem at the New York Times.
The New York Times has a lot of problems, but I wouldn't say
women problem. Like they cite Graham Plattner's accuser, the oyster farmer who ran for Senate in Democrat in Maine before he was tossed. And then, but that's assuming, first of all, that all journalists are the same and they operate from the same, manifest at the New York Times. But it's also forgetting, in that case, the Blake Lively situation, where the New York Times basically regurgitated Blake's California civil complaint and had an article out the next day taking a giant, all over Baldoni, who was now, and boy, that took the court of public opinion swung, and Baldoni was down on the mat. The only thing Brian Friedman could do in order to just right the ship to where it's even, at least, or give the guy a chance, is to file this wild $400 million defamation suit against Blake and $150 million against the New York Times, which you'll see, Amy's legal team is not doing. Mm-hmm. They knew that would get thrown out probably. But the whole point was just to, he was like DOA if they didn't do that, and they write it. So that's exactly what you do. That's exactly what you do. The New York Times defames me as a liar about, again, we're talking about violent, repeated childhood sexual assault, which I think, should be held sacred. And if I'm coming forward and I'm saying this happened to me and it matters, and there are reasons why these people need to be held to account who have so far skated, I'm suing the New York Times into oblivion. The other thing I love about, her husband, Amy's husband, who is a billionaire, they live, only one of their properties is a $77 million townhouse on the Upper East Side. They've got a home in the Bahamas. They've got a home in New Zealand. John Griffin could keep these people tied up in court till the end of his natural life. Amy comes home after this session and says, sum and substance, John, I've just realized that I was brutally raped as a child multiple times. And John says, let's investigate this. They spend their money. They hire a PI. Mr. Mason comes back clean as a whistle. The guy doesn't have a record. There's no reports or rumors of anything. John turns around and says to Amy, as she writes in her own memoir, I can't go on with this. I'm out. We're done. Do whatever you want with this. So it's like, if it's true, and that's my husband's reaction, I'm divorcing you. Next time I see you, it's going to be in divorce court. Get the fuck out. Do you know what I'm saying? Where he says, like, I just need to be your husband right now. Well, then be my husband and support me through this trauma that's upended my life. It's interesting. You mentioned before, the glitterati, all the people that trucked out the story and got on it. The one person, and I credit a TikToker named Katie in KC, who did this thing yesterday where Martha Stewart had Amy on her podcast. I searched for it. You can't find the episode. This is wild. But this woman found it and went through it. And where everybody else was sort of like, Amy Griffin, oh my God, oh la la la, look at this. Martha went a little more Mike Wallace from 60 Minutes. I mean, Martha was like, hold on for a second. Where did this happen? Why didn't you tell anyone? She did this interview, and I listened to the clips that this woman on TikTok found. And what's interesting is she says, well, it only happened on school grounds. And Martha said, what do you mean? And then she said, and only in the bathroom.
Our story is changing.
But she said that to Martha. That's why maybe it's missing. But excuse me, what happened to, as you said, the classroom,
Mhm.
under the bleachers,
Mhm.
the tennis center,
Mhm.
the locker room floor,
Mhm.
the janitor's closet?
Mhm.
We're missing 5 other locations,
Mhm.
but only, she said, in the bathroom.
Not for nothing, but Martha Stewart did jail time. Okay, she is familiar with the
Hardened
criminal
criminal.
mind. You know, she picked up a thing or two. You know, and I love that of everyone is Martha Stewart, who's like, "Excuse me, let's pause for a moment. You have some inconsistencies here."
Yeah, you said the affect, right? When you listen, I listened to the tell on, the audio book, and,
Mhm.
there was definitely some affect that I could pick up. But when she was being interviewed by Martha, what was interesting was, I think she was sort of like psyched, like she was impressed, like, holy, Martha Stewart is a legend, and I'm sitting with Martha. So the affect was very different. The energy was different. The voice was like explainy and almost, kind of laudatory or praising of Martha, and like wanting to give her more.
So
So
this is,
it was an interesting energy.
that's so interesting you say that because Belle Burden, whose book
Yes.
Strangers is a
Yeah.
very similar thing. Okay, number one, I had the exact same reaction to Belle Burden being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey for her podcast. Belle Burden, worth $63 million, descended from Standard Oil money and at least one Vanderbilt, is sitting there like, oh my God, Oprah's talking to me. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oprah likes me. But you're supposed to be devastated, right? Your husband left you in financial ruin and wreckage. Secondly, do you know, Billy, that Amy Griffin and Belle Burden have the exact same editor at Dial Press? A woman named Whitney Frick.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we at The Nerve reached out to Whitney. So we're like, hey, you got a problem, sister. You got these books that like are
Wait, you know who else?
Who?
The Penguin Dial, who they also had, was James Fry.
It's in the water supply. James Fry, I think what Oprah did to him was disgusting. Remember, so James Fry wrote this memoir called A Million Little Pieces, which was about his ostensible hardcore drug addiction. Later came out that he fabricated a lot of stuff or embellished, and Oprah was fuming because she made it an Oprah book club pick. American housewives love nothing more than like a reprobate middle-aged drug addict. I don't know. And so she dragged him back on stage with his publisher, who I believe was the legendary Nan Talese, and took him to the woodshed for an hour. How dare you? You lied to me. You broke my trust. You lied to my audience. You lied to America. Explain yourself. Justify your behavior. Where is Oprah now with the likes of Amy and the likes of Belle Burden? Don't forget, Oprah was also the one who was praising Elizabeth Gilbert to the high heavens, had Liz on her show multiple times, said she was the bravest person she knew after Liz relayed the portion of her recent memoir in which Liz writes literally her girlfriend, she was plotting to murder her girlfriend. She was going to swap out the girlfriend's chemo pills for something that would be more efficacious in killing someone. And then when the girlfriend passed out, she was going to smother the girlfriend to death with a pillow. And then she changed her mind at some point. The kicker being the girlfriend already had terminal cancer. She just wasn't dying fast enough for Elizabeth. It kind of feels like Elizabeth wanted to get going with this memoir, get back on Oprah. She needed the girlfriend to die to get through it. So Oprah is just such a dark force in this culture. And of course, Oprah, who, told America multiple times she too is a survivor of childhood sexual assault. Again, is nothing sacred? You would think Oprah would be fuming.
Is it okay that the glitterati led by Oprah wait until the legal situation is, and then if it turns out that either Amy loses or there's an obvious settlement, where we all know when a settlement is, why it's done. Most often in my opinion, 90% of the time, if you settle, you're guilty. If she waits until then.
Did the glitterati wait until Harvey Weinstein had his day in court?
They
No.
did not.
They immediately were like, he's a rapist, he's a rapist, he's a rapist. Let's all dress in black. Let's go to the Golden Globes and let's all dress in black. And let's bring out some activists who are not really red carpet ready, but that's our hot new accessory. Remember when the founder of Me Too, that poor woman, they were dragging her out? It's the hottest new accessory, the black co-founder or founder of the Me Too moment. Give me a break.
The pins on the lapels. Yeah, there's a lot of voices that are quiet. Is there anything that in Jolene's case, or from her vantage point, that is a question mark or problematic at all?
I don't know, because we don't know this woman and we don't know her story. Two things strike me as to her credibility. One is she seems to have wanted nothing to do with this. She kept herself anonymous.
She worked in the business of
yes, and that
children of adult sexual abuse.
That is a calling, and that is usually that people who do that. It's kind of like you'll find. I think it's often recovered addicts tend to work in the field, right, with other addicts who are struggling. So it's sort of a tribe of people who care for each other. And the other thing is, she I think Amy just thought she was an easy mark. This woman, when the New York Times found her, was making $21 an hour as in a home healthcare aide for an Alzheimer's patient. I mean, my mother has dementia. That is hard work. And she has contemporaneous outcry witnesses. I don't know. I again, we don't know Jolene yet. But if you ask me to choose now, who do I believe, Amy or Jolene? It's Jolene.
Unfortunately, Amy has not come out with anything. There's so much. I also think about the hometown. I think about her, her father. Like, her father lives in town. There's a family friend whose name we know, real name we know, who Amy alleges abused her when she was 8 years old. I believe he lives in Amarillo. That's the first one. And then you got, her dad said, I'm going to go see this guy. I'm going to go see this teacher, Mr. Mason, which is what they call. And she's, no, don't do it. I mean, what stops a Texas father from heading on down the street?
Seriously.
You don't need a lawyer to walk down the street and say, you mother, something.
You're so right about that. You are so right about that.
I know. If I knew a name and, with my, one of my girls, you might read about me in the newspaper the next day, and I'll be doing some time. But, I have a friend, Billy, who there was a troublesome employee at an elementary school. And there was a meeting held, and my friend, a male, sat in that meeting with the school principal and the troublesome employee of that school, and said in front of the principal to said employee, if I see you anywhere or hear of you anywhere near my child again, I will have you killed and they will never find your body. Sounds right.
That is the reaction of a father who thinks that his daughter may be in some kind of danger from a creep and a predator like that.
That's absolutely correct. And it's another one of these big, question marks to me. So here we are in this thing, and at the time of our airing, our posting, we're waiting on today. Perhaps that judge, old Richard Fruin, is going to rule whether this thing goes forward. And I just don't see how he could determine that Jolene's case is meritless.
And that's why,
and it just has to be a little bit of merit.
Yeah. And that's why you continuing to bang this drum on your show, what we've been doing over at The Nerve, the New York Times, Megan's been covering this as well, Megyn Kelly. There are very few media outlets banging this drum, It's astonishing to me, because if Amy Griffin is a liar, this is a huge story. This is the kind of stuff where a big 5 publisher says, you know what, we got to pulp that book.
Callahan, do you ever get the Callahan auto? I always think of Callahan auto from Tommy Boy. Do you ever see Tommy Boy?
We all have the Callahan auto body parts t-shirt in the Callahan family from Tommy
I'm going to
Boy.
wear it next time I talk to you. I
love it.
One of my
It's
favorite
one of my favorite
lines.
movies.
One of my favorite lines from that movie is, Maureen, I could get a good look at a T-bone steak by sticking my head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it.
Was Chris Farley ever better than in Tommy Boy?
No. And
No.
David Spade.
David Spade, brilliant. Oh my! And the scene where they're in the convertible, the car is falling apart, and they're like crying to AM radio. I forget what the song is.
Oh, Ed is too.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, right. Ed is too. I can't sing it. But
No, it's like a love song. It's like a soft rock 70s love song. I forget what it is. I'll find it.
Hold on. What is the love song that Tommy Boy and David Spade sing in the car when they're on the highway? Superstar by the Carpenters?
Yes. Don't you remember? You told me you loved me, baby.
And
Said you were
Eres
coming
Tu
back.
by Mocedades.
Oh, that's a deep cut. I didn't realize that one.
Not to mention a little Come On Eileen, always one of my, always a favorite Halloween costume. Anyway, Maureen Callahan from The Nerve. You're awesome. I appreciate having you. Subscribe
Thanks, Billy.
to Maureen, and I'll see you maybe next week when I
Sounds
show
good.
up to see you.
Sounds great. The troublemakers cannot wait. They've been asking for you repeatedly.
I'm back. I'm ready.
Love it.
All right. Thanks, Maureen Callahan. That's it for Hot Mics today. Please hit subscribe. Ta-ta.
Yeah, just me doing me, right?
Quite a shark. That's insane. Belly bush. What a clever.
Another compliment. There she is.